This review is brought to you in part by Ryder's Hobby Shops, where the fun begins. Stop in to one of Ryder's 2 convenient Michigan locations where you'll find a full range of the latest hobby products, supplies, parts, tools, and paint.
Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review covers the re-release of the Revell Ford Ranger pickup. This is kit number 85-4360 in the current catalog. It's been released in multiple box art forms in the past, but this is the first since the 81 kit to be seen in this form. Revell rates it a skill level 2 for the intermediate builder because it requires paint and glue. Now the kit consists of 78 parts molded in white, clear, and chrome and has vinyl tires. The decals are a new design to create a two-tone truck, and the instructions are typical Revell book format, but there are some errors that you'll have to take note of. You get a full motor to assemble, and it has good detail. The chassis is in multiple parts and lends itself to detailing, and you can lift the suspension to make it a larger 4x4. The interior is the typical tub style of the 80s, and the body is a multiple part unit that can be fully assembled prior to paint. The tires are hard vinyl with no markings, however. Overall, it's about 7 3/4 inches long, 4 inches wide, and 3 inches high. Here are the decals for this kit. The color is good and registry is great. And I recommend that you use some of these aftermarket setting solutions to make sure that these large decals conform to the body's contours and stick well. And I would also suggest that you use the manufacturer's safety suggestions when using any of the products you see in the review for your own protection. We'll be using mostly Model Masters liquid cement. Occasionally, however, super glue is called for strength and white glue for clear parts. Pull these parts out of the kit and we'll start construction with the motor. Assemble the block, the heads, the front, and the intake, and then paint the motor blue and the transmission aluminum. The starter is black with gold solenoid and the exhaust manifolds are steel. The fan is black and the belt flat black with aluminum pulleys. And the carb is a brass color. Now add the valve covers and the carb to the motor, and add the alternator to the belt and install the belt and fan on front. And now add the manifolds in place too. I decided to make the motor look a little more realistic, so I put together a little distributor here out of some small wire and some plastic styrene tubing, and also some black tubing for the boots. And they're pretty easy to put together with a little super glue. You could do that yourself, or you could buy one of the pre-wired units that are for sale quite reasonably on the internet and in your hobby shops. So I'm going to be using that, and we're going to show you the wiring diagram here. So drill out the hole for the distributor shaft up front, and the smaller holes for the plugs in the manifold indents there. And then go ahead and use some super glue to glue the wires in and boots into place, and you have a completed motor that looks a little more realistic with some spark plug wires on it. Now we can work on the chassis, but notice on the fuel tank there's a script there that should be removed with a blade and sanded off for realism. And grab these parts out along with the motor assembly. Then paint the chassis black with steel exhaust, assemble and paint the transfer case gunmetal, and then install the transfer case, and then add the motor onto the motor blocks and the third member there. We can use these pieces to assemble the suspensions next, so paint them all flat black and highlight the tie rods with some steel. The exhaust Y there is a steel color, and the springs are flat black with the spring itself being steel. And if you look in the next pic here, you can see that you highlight the springs only and leave the flat black and the insets. Now the shocks are painted the color of your favorite brand. Most are red, yellow, blue, or black, or whatever you like actually. Install the rear suspensions into place on the locating tabs, and then align the drive shaft into the transfer case and add the shocks. And note that the shocks are supposed to go inside the frame rails, but the mounts are too far outside to line them up. So to repair that, cut the mounts off of the axle and attach them closer to the differential. That'll fix the angle so that you can mount them properly. Now install the springs, the front springs there, and add the front suspension on its tabs, and line up the drive shaft and the transfer case. Optionally, this chassis is perfect to lend itself for lifting the suspension, to jack it up like a real trucks are, and you can use the lift blocks from some styrene that you cut and add any lift to the suspension that you want to create new front springs with styrene rod and a pen spring like from an ink pen. So look online, and there's a lot of different aftermarket resin companies that actually sell larger 4x4 tires and lift kits for these trucks. B&L Resin has them. Unlimited has them, and those are just two companies where you can buy aftermarket parts for really dressing up these kits. Now we can turn our attention to the wheel assemblies with these pieces, and I would like you to consider giving the tires a worn look by pressing and rolling the tread on some 220 grit sandpaper to rough up the tread surface, and then add the front rim front to the tire and paint the rim back flat black with an aluminum outer ring, and the hub insert is flat black and inserted into the rim back. Now install this into the tire. You can see the roughed surface there looks much more realistic. Now the tires are non-directional and they're all the same size, so where you put them on the vehicle isn't important. So this is the rear suspension in place with the tires snapped onto the spindles. Now just remember to glue the hub insert to the suspension pin on the four tires so that you allow rotation. And here's the front suspension for a closer view to see how all that goes together. As you can see, the build is progressing pretty well, and the chassis is now completed, having deviated from the instructions somewhat to complete this section of it. I think it's just more stable and easier to build when I put modules together like this. Now we're going to once again deviate from the instructions and skip ahead to the cab assembly and begin the interior. We'll grab these parts out for the dash and assemble the parts and the decals to finish the dashboard. As this particular model has one of the upscale trim packages, we're going to paint the dash with a two-tone tan and nutmeg scheme, and the lower dash is tan, then taped off, and paint the dash pad on top a nutmeg color. The steering wheel and the column is assembled and painted nutmeg with a silver and black stock. Optionally, there weren't any decals for the dash for this kit, so I searched the internet and found something that for that model, and I printed them 9/16 wide and used some Scotch tape for the lenses, and just covered them up, then glued them on with a little white glue. The radio was done in the same manner, and then you can the other dash instruments are black with some silver trim, and the pedals are black with silver arms. For the interior tub, there are a tub and a seat and these pieces. There are two chrome floor shifters too. Now paint the tub flat black on the bottom and tan on the inside with nutmeg door panels, and continue this two-tone scheme if you're going to paint the outside of your model that way. So the seat is a nutmeg color in this case, and the shifter boots and the knobs are flat black, and the window cranks are silver. Back in the 80s, carpeting started to become a standard feature for trucks, so I decided to just take some craft flocking, which you can buy on the internet or at a craft store, sift it out with a sifter, and then because I had already painted the floor a complementary color, you just cover that with some white glue. Sometimes a 50-50 mix is all that's required. Then pour the flocking onto it, tamp it down just a little bit, and then shake off any excess, tap it off, and you've got yourself a carpeted floor. Call me crazy, but I also decided to go online and find some floor mats for my custom truck, and they're out there. There's pictures all over the place. I just printed them out on some plain white paper with a color inkjet printer. Fit the cut, kind of sized them up so they fit, and cut them out and glued them into place for a custom look. Now we can put it all together. So install the seat, the shifters, and the dash into the slots provided there. The column is inserted into the dash, and that completes the interior. So we'll just set this aside for now. So now we can return to the instruction assembly sequence and prepare the cab by installing the rear wall into it, and then wet sand the cab with some fine sandpaper, wet or dry, like 800 grit, for any of the mold line seams that you find there. Although they're pretty minimal, these molds are in pretty good shape. Also, we've got the hood there, and we'll be prepping it all for paint. Now we'll assemble the bed prior to paint, and so grab these parts out, fenders, tailgate, etc. And the floor is a wood color, so I'll not assemble the sides to the floor yet, but there is a pretty significant error in the instructions here. If you look at them, they have the steps going towards the tailgate and back, but that's incorrect. Those steps for the step side go towards the front, near the back end of the cab, so keep that in mind when you put this together. So assemble the sides only at this time and wet sand the parts to prepare for primer, just like you did with the cab. And the tailgate and the sides will be installed after the paintwork and decal goes onto the floor of the bed. After you've got all the blemishes off of the body and the cab and the bed, we're going to prime them with a good quality primer, and then wet sand the primer after it's done to smooth it out and prepare for the base coat. Now this kit also has option for a sunroof inside the cab, so if you turn it upside down, you'll see there's a cutout there. So use the back side of a sharp hobby blade and just kind of slowly drag that around inside the scribe line there until you cut it out. Then sand it off smooth and test fit the roof panel to make sure that it works there. I used a Gravity Colors paint called Ford Guardsman Blue. It's GC 215, and that is a dull coat which needs a clear lacquer spray over it for shine, but it's a beautiful paint. You might want to try some. And this cab came out just beautiful in that bright blue metallic. So I sprayed all the body pieces and the bed pieces that you saw earlier with that, and we're going to let that set and dry. So I decided to use the large decals to give my truck a two-tone color scheme, and I suggest again using the setting solutions to make sure that those big decals will nestle onto the contours just like paint. So if you use that, then squeeze it out, squeeze any of the water or air bubbles out of the big panel decals there, and then let that set to dry at least overnight. Once those decals have fully cured and they're dry, go ahead and give your whole car or truck a body a spray of clear to bring out the shine and seal in the decals. Now we're going to use some bare metal foil. That's the brand of foil application here for the highlights of the trim on the truck. It's just like tape. You cut a strip off larger than the actual trim that you're going to cover. You seal it down, you burnish it, and then you trim off the excess with a brand new hobby knife blade. Well, the bed is designed to look like a wood slat bed, and you can finish this off with paints, but I chose to go out and find some wood slat decals by just taking a picture of some wood flooring and then printing it out on my color printer and applying it to the bed of the truck. Then I just painted the strips in between aluminum color and the back panel body color, and it came out pretty well. Now you can take the side panels and the tailgate and glue those into place on the bed as well, and it looks pretty good when you're finished. So go ahead and grab the window glass now, and I like to dip this into a small vat of Pledge Floor Care liquid wax. It gives the windows a clearer, crisper look. Actually improves them. Just wick off the excess fluid there and let it dry. Then I used a black Sharpie to paint the window surrounds on the rear glass and around the molding area for the sunroof glass. Then it's time to go ahead and install the window glass, and as you can see here, a generous bead of white glue around the outside will keep the windows in place and dries clear so that you can't see any glue marks. I looked for a decal, well, not a decal, but a sticker to put on the back of my window to emulate the kinds of things that are found there. They're popular these days. So I found this one, and I printed it on a self-adhesive Avery label, and then I just sized it up to make sure it would fit first, printed it on the label, then cut it out and put it and covered the entire rear window with it. And of course you can't see through that, but you can't see through the real ones either. So I wanted for a little more realism for the back of the window there, so that's how I made this Ford decal. Now, to personalize my truck, I printed out a copy of my logo onto some plain white paper, and then with a color inkjet printer, covered it with a clear piece of tape, and then it'll be available to glue with some on with some white glue, just like you would with the normal decal tag, which you just cut out and stick on with white glue. Don't use it as a decal, just use it as a paper applique, then glue it into place. Now we use these parts to assemble the cab, and I used a what we call a black wash, which is some black paint with appropriate thinner, about 50-50, to wash the grill, and then wipe it off of the highlights to expose the chrome. Then paint the marker lights transparent yellow, install the headlights and the marker lights into the grill, and then install the grill into the body. Now install the front bumper and add the license tag there, and insert and install the interior into place with some good glue like an epoxy. Now get these two parts out and paint the air filter and intake section there of flat black, and then the radiator shroud is flat black with a silver cap, and the front panel, however, is a body color. Now install the cab onto the chassis, and then insert the radiator shroud into the engine bay and add the air cleaner to the top of the motor. Get out these parts to finish up in the back end there, and install the bed, and we'll put the bed cover on. It's an option. I didn't glue it on, I just painted it flat black, and you can set it there. The tag mount is attached to the bumper, and the bumper is painted chrome or silver, and then add the license tag, install the bed to the back of the cab and onto the frame. Then add the bumper to the frame and add the taillight decals to the taillights and install them on the bed. Then add the cover. Now for the final assemblies, go ahead and glue the mirrors into place and install the hood by just inserting it into the hood opening area. Well, that's pretty much it. You won't have too many pieces left. I just had some extra decals and a few doodads here. So this is a single purpose build, and for what it looks like, even though it's a pretty low part count, it comes out with a lot of detail, looking pretty cool. So there you have it. This Revell release brings back the factory 4x4, and it's nice to see it again. It also lends itself to excellent aftermarket parts to make some of the more beefier looking Ford trucks out there. So this kit went together pretty well, and it's the only issue that I saw was the instruction issue for the side bed parts. But you could add, lift blocks to the frame and the suspension and make this look just about any way you want to. Everything fit together pretty well. There were no real issues. Everything fit well, and everything was pretty straight. I would recommend this to just about anybody. The only difficult parts are probably those large decals. Otherwise, I think this is made for just about any builder to come and put together and look pretty nice when they're done. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this premium step-by-step model kit review from Right On Replicas, and so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. But you can find us on Facebook, and as always, at our website, www.rightonreplicas.com. Thanks!